Voice. Voice is that form of a verb which shows whether the subject does something or has something done to it. There are two kinds of voice, active voice and passive voice. Active voice. When a subject performs the action stated by the verb, the sentence is said to be in the active voice. And when the subject of a verb receives the action stated in the verb, the sentence is said to be in the passive voice. It means when the verb in a sentence shows that the subject is the doer of the action, the verb is in the active voice. And when the verb in a sentence shows that the subject is not the doer of the action, the verb is in the passive voice. Look at the following example. The girl plucked the flower. The flower was plucked by the girl. In sentence 1, the girl is the subject. The verb plucked tells us that the girl is the doer of the action. Therefore, the verb plucked is in the active voice. In the second sentence, the flower is the subject. The verb was plucked tells us that the subject, the flower, is passive, not the doer of the action. The verb was plucked is in the passive voice. Transformation of sentences from active voice to passive voice. Remember that only transitive verbs can be changed to the passive voice, since transitive verbs have an object. When we change a sentence from the active to the passive voice, the object of the active voice becomes the subject of the passive voice, and the subject of the active voice becomes the object of the passive voice. We usually use by before the object. So we can deduce that when we change a sentence from the active to the passive voice, we usually use first of all object, then helping verb, then verb 3, then by, and then subject. One more important thing is when we change a sentence from the active to the passive voice, the subject pronouns change to the object pronouns. Similarly, the object pronouns take the place of the subject and change to subject pronouns. Let's see the table to understand the change in pronouns. He, him, she, her, I, me, they, them, we, us. See the table to understand the tense structure when we change a sentence from the active to the passive voice in singular and plural number. In the simple present tense, the verb in the passive voice is made by adding the past participle mean third form of the verb to am is are. In the simple past tense, the verb in the passive voice is made by adding the past participle mean third form of the verb to was and were. In the simple future tense, the verb in the passive voice is made by adding the past participle mean third form of the verb to shall be and will be. Let's see the example. In the simple present tense, Robin writes a poem. A poem is written by Robin. Robin writes poems. Poems are written by Robin. In the simple past tense, Robin wrote a poem. A poem was written by Robin. Robin wrote poems. Poems were written by Robin. In the simple future tense, Robin will write a poem. A poem will be written by Robin. Robin will write poems. Poems will be written by Robin. In the present continuous tense, the verb is the passive voice is made by adding the third form of the verb to am is are and being. And in the past continuous tense, the verb in the passive voice is made by adding the third form of the verb to was, were, and being. See the example in present continuous tense. Robin is writing a poem. A poem is being written by Robin. Robin is writing poems. Poems are being written by Robin. In past continuous tense, Robin was writing a poem. A poem was being written by Robin. Robin was writing poems. Poems were being written by Robin. In the present perfect tense, the verb in the passive voice is made by adding the third form of the verb to has been and have been. In the past perfect tense, hence the verb in the passive voice is made by adding the third form of the verb to had been. And in the future perfect tense, the verb in the passive voice is made by adding the third form of the verb to shall or will and have been. Let's see the example in present perfect tense. Robin has written a poem. A poem has been written by Robin. Robin has written poems. Poems have been written by Robin. In past perfect tense, Robin had written a poem. A poem had been written by Robin. Robin had written poems. Poems had been written by Robin. In future perfect tense, I shall have written the book. The book will have been written by me. A question, when changed to passive voice, retains its form. Only the form of the verb and the pronouns change. For example, when did they invite you? When were you invited by them? Is he disturbing you? Are you being disturbed by him? Students, I would suggest you listen the video twice and try to understand, and to make notes as well video so that you do not forget the rules.